Well, closing arguments in New York's criminal trial against Donald Trump expected on Tuesday as Judge Juan Merchan weighs Trump's motion to dismiss the case altogether. Former U.S. Assistant Attorney Andy McCarthy on what we can expect when the court is back in session. Andy, great to see you. Thank you for being here. Wall Street Journal
Morning,
editorial page, which is not known as a fan of Donald Trump, came out with an editorial today. It's headlined, "Bragg Hasn't Proved His Case." And it says at the end, conviction or no, this is a case that should never have been brought. Do you agree with that?
I do. And, you know, look, they're often not fans of prosecutors. And, well, I don't want to say in general, but in a lot of cases. And I think this is one where you have a politically ambitious prosecutor who brought a very weak, very politicized, selective prosecution against the main enemy of the opposition party. That's really what it is.
Did we ever learn, Andy, exactly what charge lifted an expired misdemeanor into 34 felonies?
Well, it sure sounds, David, like they're doing some version of federal campaign law. I have to say some version because even though Congress created the Federal Election Commission and vested it and the Justice Department with exclusive authority to enforce the federal election laws in the United States, Bragg, who has no such authority, the district attorney in Manhattan, is really making up his own version of what campaign law is. And it appears from all of the arguments that they'd made last week that that's where they're headed. But I have to say, you're asking a good question because the indictment, I think, fails as an indictment because it doesn't put the defense on notice about what the charges are. Bragg's been cagey throughout, and to this day, we don't even have the jury charge that the judge is going to give next week, the instructions to the jury about what they have to find in order to make a verdict in this case.
Related to all that, is the judge going to instruct the jury that hush money, which is they spent a lot of time dealing with, is not a crime?
I don't think so. I think he's the way the prosecutors have pitched this case, and Merchan hasn't stopped them from doing that. If you paid hush money with the intention of affecting the election, then he's going to leave it open that you could find a campaign violation. I think that's totally wrong as a matter of law. I think categorically these non-disclosure agreements are legal and are not campaign contributions or expenditures. But that's what Brad Smith was going to testify about, the former FEC commissioner, and Merchan didn't allow him to testify.
And instead, you had Michael Cohen, who's a convicted liar. He admitted to being a thief this week. He was instructing the jury about election law. It was ridiculous when you had the possibility of having an FEC chairman come in and really describe the law. Instead, they took the word of a liar, and the judge let it happen.
And I think it's even more outrageous than that, David, because not only did he do that, but the void in Bragg's case is that he hasn't proved anything with respect to the election laws that Trump was even thinking about them in 2016 and 2017 when all this activity took place. He's trying to fill that void by proving and reminding the jury again and again that Cohen pled guilty to campaign finance violations. That is inadmissible evidence against Trump. It was improper for the judge to let that in. And laughably, his rationalization for letting it in was that it was relevant to Cohen's credibility. The prosecutors didn't want to impeach their own witness. They wanted that information in to try to convince the jury that if Cohen pled guilty to campaign finance violations, Trump must be guilty too, which is exactly the reason that evidence isn't supposed to come in.
So it really hits on a main point here. Is it just fair, flat out, to say that this judge has been unfair to Donald Trump?
Oh, I believe that. Look, I think he's been in the tank for the prosecution from the beginning. All of the pretrial rulings were strongly in Bragg's favor. He's made a few, he's thrown a few bones to the defense here and there to try to, I think, protect himself from bias claims on the record. But you can't read this transcript, which I spent a lot of this week doing, without seeing that he's letting in a lot of evidence that he knows is extremely prejudicial and shouldn't have any business being in this case, and he let it all in.
Well, and constantly overruling the objections of the defense while sustaining the objections of the prosecution. I mean, it's just happened time after time after time again. Finally, Andy, if Donald Trump is found guilty, God knows exactly when the verdict will come in, but if he is found guilty, could he be put in jail? And could he be, in fact, elected president while he's in jail?
I don't think he'll be put in jail, David, because it's a nonviolent crime. He's a first offender. In New York, I think once he files a notice of appeal, he's out until the appeal is decided. And, you know, I think Eugene Debs, if I'm remembering this right, ran for president from prison. So it's not unheard of in the United States to have people who are in custody who run for president. You know, look, some of them, at least we know where to find them, right?
Well, that's true. We know where he is.
Some of what we have now.
We know where,
right.
The times we live in, Andy. Whoever thought? Andy McCarthy, great to see you, my friend. Thanks for being here. Appreciate
Thanks,
it. Well,
Dave.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.